Hello, everyone. Welcome to this ITM Platform training. My name is Rene Alvarez, and I'll be happy to assist you during this session. For this session, we will cover the basics on configuring ITM Platform. We will cover things like the permissions of users, how to get access to ITM Platform, the main components, the main modules, and how you can set them up to better fit your needs. ITM Platform is a project and portfolio management solution that has been built based on project management best practices, and it can be adapted to various business needs and industries. So today we are going to cover the general setup of ITM Platform. And again, we will give you enough information to get started customizing ITM Platform to better fit your needs. Today's session, we will need like 45 minutes of your time. After that time, we will have some time to answer questions if you have them. But before we get started with the actual content, I would like to tell you also about our certifications. This training can also be used if you would like to get ITM Platform's certification. For this certification, you will need to have 10 credits, and those credits can be obtained through training or through the use of ITM Platform. If you can get 10 credits, 1 credit equals 1 hour of training, either by us or by one of our approved partners, or they can be also obtained through the use of the system, the use of ITM Platform during 1 month. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and get started with the topics for today. I'm going to share my screen real quick. And first, let me tell you some general thoughts around ITM Platform. ITM Platform is, again, a system that has been defined as a system that will allow you to manage projects, programs, and portfolios. And to better show you this, I'm going to log in to my demo environment. And the first thing that you will need to know is that ITM Platform is based on the 4 basic licenses that you see on screen. So we have full access, project manager, team member, and project guests. And real quick, a full access user, the one that we are going to need for this training session, will have access to all the modules and all the features available in ITM Platform. Okay, so I'm going to click on full access and quickly give you an overview on the system itself before we get started with the configuration. This is the main page, the home page, if you will, in ITM Platform. It contains a summary of my work, assigned tasks, and this area is mainly for the team member. We have an area for management. This is where most of the users will consume the system, like, for example, project managers that will access the project center or programs or portfolio, or maybe you would like to see some clients or resources. Now, the PMO or an advanced user will need to apply certain configurations, and these configurations can be done through the organization area, okay, where the user management is, and cost management that we will cover some basics today, and the configuration area, right? So this is where we're going to start today. I'm going to expand the organization and first show you the company settings. What is the company settings? This is where you enter some basic information about your company, about your organization. Most of that is going to be informative for you, really, but there are some components that will control other things in the system. For example, the base language in which you would like to see ITM Platform. The end user can choose their own language. However, this is the base setup, okay? Next, we have the URL. And this can be updated in case that you need that, right? When you first create your environment, your instance, you need to name it. And typically this would be after the name of your organization. And it is used in the form of URL, okay? Next, you can set up the max file size upload, okay? In ITM Platform, end users can upload documents, and here you can set the limit. You can upload as many documents as you want. However, it is a very good idea to set a limit, so not the files are not very big, right? Also, ITM Platform will control, out of the box, will control access to the system. So you can create users directly in ITM Platform. If that is the case, you would like to enforce a minimum password length. There are other cases where you can set up single sign-on integration with things like Okta or Azure Active Directory. And for that, my recommendation is to go to our help center and look for the specific technical article that will guide you through the process. Other things that might be important in this area is the standard payment period. This is used when you are closing out periods and creating invoices, if you want to do that inside the ITM Platform. And of course, what is the tax that you would like to consider for these invoices? The base currency, you choose it first when you set up the environment. This is one configuration that cannot be altered after you have created your environment. ITM Platform is a multi-currency system. However, we need you to set up a base currency. And again, that cannot be changed. So I'm going to suggest you to choose the currency where you usually operate in or where your headquarters are located in, okay? You can also control things like, for example, setting up a fiscal year, okay? And the formats, the date format, the first day of the week, or the number format that according to your region, okay? All right, what is next? Usually what is next is to configure or set up organizational units. What are organizational units? They will represent areas in your organization, like departments or areas, and they are used in different ways. For example, if I would like to see the projects or resources that we are currently managing in our system, I can go to the management area and click on the organization preview. This will display those organizational units, and they will help me display the internal users and the projects aligned with that part of the organization. Okay, so this is one reason why you would like to configure your organizational units. Other reasons for this is because the organizational units are also consumed when you create and set up a project. You can assign a performing unit. What organizational unit is in charge of this project? And the organizational units are also used for internal clients, okay? So all that depends on you configuring these units. Now, configuring the units is very simple. I just need to click on Add New Unit. It will ask me for the unit name. This is the only mandatory field, okay? If I would like to create a tree, not just a simple list, I can select a parent unit as well, okay? The rest is optional. I can enter a unit code, a description, or maybe even an email address to represent that unit, okay? So again, the organizational units are basically the name, the name and the structure that you choose if you would like to use the parent unit field, okay? All right, next, work groups. My resources, my users will will be calculated inside the system when I assign work to them, but sometimes it's good that I can group them by group name. Okay, so work groups are optional. You don't need to use them if you don't want to. Okay, but again, they will make it easier to understand and to display resources in certain occasions, in certain areas. And again, for that, you will need to create your groups in here. Similar to organization units, I can click on add new group, and as you can see, the only mandatory field is the name. Okay, the rest is optional. I can assign a group code, an email address, and a description. Now, in addition to describe the group itself, I can select which members belong to that group. Okay, this is populated after the user list, so I'm seeing current users. Okay, now a user can belong to more than one group. Okay, afterwards I'm going to show you that users can belong to a single organization unit, but they can belong to more than one work group. Okay, all right, that is the setup for organization. What is next? Next is communication. Multi-language is merely informative. You already choose the base language of your system in the organization page. Okay, but in here, ITM Platform will display any available language in the system. These are our 3 base languages. So not much to configure in here. In the settings, though, in here I can decide when I create new users, for example, what rules should apply to them at first. Some of these settings can be overridden by the end user. For example, I would like to receive or not receive certain notifications, but when I create new users, I would like to control them in a certain way. So, for example, if you like to send out a message when they receive a direct message in our conversation system, or when they have comments, or for example, alerts before or after a task ends. Next, we have the company email settings. You can enable or disable certain notifications. Maybe there are some notifications that are more important to you than others. You can control them system-wide in this area. And in addition to that, you can also customize your own email templates. Okay, for example, here I'm going to choose English and apply the filter to display existing messages, existing templates. And for example, I can choose this one, new project assign. This means that I would like to send out a notification to someone saying that they have been included in a project. So in here, what you can do is control the content for the email. The pieces that are inside these square brackets, they will represent the variables used by ITM Platform, like the email address. So I'm going to suggest not to modify them, but you can control the rest. You can include the rest of the information that you would like to provide to your end users. Okay. All right. Next, we can set up our parameters. For this, first, we need to review the main objects inside ITM Platform. Let's start with projects, okay? There are several things that you would like to customize for your own environment. The first thing is the project priority, okay? You can confirm, create new priorities, delete the ones that you don't want to have in here. Out of the box, you get this: high, low, normal, and urgent. Things that you can do, for example, you can change the description or the name. You can change the priority icon. The icons are very useful, for example, when you are displaying them in a view, okay? And as you can see, you can create the ones that you need. Sometimes these catalogs will need a default value, right? So this is what you have in here. Which one of these should be the default value when I'm creating a new product? Now, I have I'm going to skip the project status for a second. We will return to that in a moment. Next, we can define our project types. This is an important piece to configure, right? Which project types you would like to have inside your system. Again, this is out of the box. Change management, construction, consultancy, general things, general project types, okay? What can you configure about those? If I click on Add New Type, it will ask me for a name, a description. Again, I can select an icon. Now, the progress on revenue methods are going to be easier to understand in a little while. So I'm going to skip that as well for a second. In here, you're going to have that default, that base list. Okay, so when you create a new project, you will need to choose what is the type of your project. Okay. Now, about those methods, first, let me explain a couple of things. I'm going to switch back to the projects list to explain something real quick. Even if you are not going to manage projects, and that is up to the project manager, as system configurators, you will need to understand a couple of concepts. In ITM Platform, there are some aspects of projects that need to be calculated automatically. One of those aspects is the progress. In other words, the percent completed, right, for each project. And we have certain methods. For example, the calculation can be based on duration or based on estimated hours. And the method, as you can see, it's a little bit different. It's not the same to have completed certain number of days than a certain amount of hours, okay? And all the things that can be automatically calculated inside the system include the revenue and revenue recognition, okay? So this is a common setup for projects. As a project manager, it's important that I know that ITM Platform will perform certain calculations automatically, okay? Now, it's up to you as system configurators to define if this is available for change or pre-populated, pre-selected for your end users. Let's go back to the parameters area in the projects, okay? And from here, let me show you that if I pick a specific project type, I can select a method for progress on revenue. And as you can see, this case says inherited. What is that? That I already have a tab in here for methods across project types. So whatever I enter in here applies to all projects in ITM Platform, okay? Now, for certain types, the methods might be different. For example, it's not the same an IT project than a marketing project than a face customer project, right? So depending on that type, you might like to choose the method applied, the method applicable. So in case that you want to follow whatever says in the methods tab, you need to choose inherited. If no, then you can choose customized and then customize the methods explicitly for this project type, okay? Another aspect that you can configure in here is whether you would like to use sprints or no by default, okay? The end user, the project manager can choose to enable sprints if they want to, right? In some cases, you would like to have that by default. In other cases, you want the project manager to choose it, okay? Now, there is another aspect as well, another catalog, the project approval. The project approval is basically a field that will tell me if my project has been approved or rejected or pending the approval, okay? And this is, again, just merely informative. I can create new values, okay, entering the name, the description, and the approval icon if I want to, okay? But one of those need to be default. All right, as you can see, this is pretty much what I can configure in terms of the project object. We have two things to discuss before we jump into another object. This is the project status, okay? And the project status will control a very important aspect on the project management process, the process itself, right? It is very common for project management to think about terms of project lifecycle or project management lifecycle. So what are the sequence or the steps that a project manager or project would need to follow from beginning to the end, okay? This is where you can configure exactly that, okay? Out of the box, you will see a basic list of these statuses. For example, initial or draft, okay? And then you can move alongside those steps. The basic setup, the out-of-the-box setup, is completely manual. So this means, and actually let me go ahead and open this in a second tab. If I go to any project, inside the project general information page, I can change the project status. And here it says in progress, right? If I click in here, I can select the new status. Maybe right now it's in progress and I would like to proceed to the closeout. Okay. Well, that will depend exactly on how you configure this area. If it's 100% manual, the only thing that you need to do is create the list of different statuses in here. And then it's up to the project manager to choose what is the next step, what is the next stage, okay? If you would like to follow a very specific process, like the one you are seeing in here, okay, we need to configure the following steps. Let me explain this with more detail. First, we need to choose a default setting, right? A default value. For example, in this case, it's in progress. Probably this is not a very good idea. I would like to set it as draft. So what does that mean? That whenever I create a new project, is going to be is going to have the draft status. Okay. But what happens then? Okay. To which steps could I go after draft is completed? This is what you can see in here, but to define it, we need to open the status itself and then configure the destination statuses. For example, from draft, I can move only to initial, or maybe to all, or maybe to cancel. Maybe this is valid. Maybe I can create a draft proposal, but after a little while we can cancel because we are not going to approve it, right? But before getting to in progress, I cannot go directly from draft to in progress. I will need to go first to initial. So this is exactly what you define in the destination statuses, okay? Once you define these rules for this step, you can confirm the changes in this graph. So from draft, I can go to initial, okay? Or I can go to canceled directly if I need, okay? Now, another important aspect is that sometimes I'm going to require an approval to enter a particular step, okay, or a status. For example, I cannot simply decide to go to in progress or maybe to go to closed. I will need to I will need to get the approval from an actor in the project management process. Okay, how can I define that? Well, for that, let me show you this one in progress. So in here, in the authorization area, I can configure different approval rules or authorization rules. Okay, for example, this one, condition says none. This means that all the time, I don't need to look at any specific data in my project. So all projects will need to follow this process, this rule. Okay, the model contains these options. For example, none. I don't need to approve anything, right? At least one approver from the list to the right. At least n. At least 3, at least 5, all of the authorizers I'm going to choose next. Or I can select all. I want all authorizers to say yes before adopting this status, okay? So you choose the model, and then you can click in here on edit, and it's going to display existing users, so you can choose which ones will need to provide the authorization for this step, okay? I can create more rules. For example, I can say, well, yes, I'm going to need to have the authorization for this from this authorizer, but only when, for example, the top-down budget is less than $5,000. or $50,000. Okay, so if it's less, okay. Sorry, I'm doing it the other way around. If it's greater than $50,000, then I'm going to need to have the authorization. If it's under $50,000, then the project can be automatically approved. Okay. So I don't need to configure a rule for that. Or maybe I want to be very specific. So I can add a new rule in here and then select the specific conditions. If you are more interested in this aspect, we will have a training to better show you how to configure the workflow itself. Okay. All right. All the things that we can configure. We cover the projects. We can go to services. Services are very similar to projects. The main difference between a project and a service is that a service does not require a complex calculation like a project. For example, a service does not include a Gantt view or a Kanban view. A service is basically a list of activities. For example, I can go here and open, I don't know, customer service. This is an example of a common service. And I can configure the service in a very similar way. But instead of having a task area, I have an activities area. So a task and an activity is very similar, but it's not quite the same. The activity does not need to be scheduled, for example, okay? But I can still create certain parameters for my service. For example, I can select the different priorities that I would like to have in my services. I can configure the service types, the values for service approval, and similar to the projects, I can create a process for services. In this case, you are seeing a 100% manual process where I can create a service and then I can select any of the other steps as the next step. Okay, and I don't require any authorization for this. Next, let me show you task parameters. The rest is going to be very simple because we are basically having a list of catalogs. Okay, for example, task priorities, we have urgent, high, normal, low, and again, similar to what we have in projects, I just need to configure the name. The descriptions are optional. Okay, task statuses, this is not a process, this is simply a value. Okay, to do in progress, to verify completed, you can create your own or delete the ones that you don't want to have, with one exception. As you can see, to do and completed, and this is true for other catalogs as well, you might not see the X, the red X to the right. If you want to delete one of those, simply click on the X. You can delete it as long as you don't have tasks or objects related to that value, okay? But as you can see, you can delete certain values if you don't want those. But there are others that might be system values, for example, to do or completed. So I need to have those. What I can configure is the name. So you always need to have at least two statuses for tasks, tasks that are not completed and tasks that are completed, for example. But again, you can change the name if you want, okay? And also you can change task types, management, design, technical. This will need to fit your project management needs, okay? Activity parameters. This is very similar to tasks. We have priorities, statuses, and activity types. Risk parameters. This is very similar with one extra aspect, one extra characteristic for risks. And this characteristic is that for risks, we can calculate an extra value, okay? For the impacts and probability values, we can display a text string, but also a numerical value, okay? For example, medium low, this is the value that I would like to display to my end users, okay? But this is the numeric value. Why is the numeric value important? Because ITM Platform will calculate the exposure of the risk or the level, if you will. Okay, this is the risk level. And again, this is automatic. I just need to set up what is the threshold, okay, for the value. But the calculation itself, it's always impact times probability, okay? The rest are simple catalogs again. So I have risk status and risk types. The same is true for issues. I can customize my issue types and issue statuses. For programs, it's pretty much the same. I have high, low, medium. For priorities, I have program statuses. In this, we don't for programs, we don't have a workflow itself. It's simply a list of values for statuses, and we can configure program types as well. Asset parameters. ITM Platform can help you also tracking assets. And here you will need to build the asset types. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you where you are going to maintain those catalogs if you want to use them, okay? Progress parameters. The progress parameters are used when you are statusing your project or your task, okay? So you can choose what is the current status. Is it good? It's critical, it's bad, it's not so bad. You can configure as many assessments as you want, okay? In this area, this is used for, again, projects and tasks alike. Purchase parameters. In ITM Platform, we can track purchases and income in the form of revenue, okay? And here you can configure or set up your types, your purchase types, goods, other, or services, for example. And similar to the rest is basically, again, a name, and the rest is optional description or an icon, okay? And the statuses. Now, in this area, this is kind of important. Let me pause in here for a second. The purchase statuses is not a simple list of values. They will help you control extra aspects in ITM Platform. For example, first, I need to have a default value, okay? Planet. In my case, what does that mean? That when I'm inside a project and I would like to, sorry, this service, let me go to a project with data, preferably. Here we go. I can go to the purchases area, and here, as you can see, I have some. When I create a new purchase, for example, selecting add new purchase, automatically I'm going to see that the current status is planned, because in here we set it as default. All right. The others are the extra values. However, usually there is a process connected to purchases. For that process, okay, I need to decide if that particular status will add up to the actual amount. For example, in this case, of course, the answer is no, right? When my purchase is just planned, it should not be included in the actual amount. Only when the purchase is an actual purchase. For example, in this case, when it has been paid. When I say that a purchase has been paid, then I want to add up the actual amount as part of the actual values of the budget. So purchases can be used to feed two columns or two areas in our budgets. For any planned values, we're going to use it for the bottom up, the estimated, whatever has not happened yet. However, we can change the status to be actual. And again, with that check mark, you can define which statuses should be considered as actuals. Okay? All right. The same is going to be true for revenue. It works in the same way. So first, I have a list of different statuses that I can have. There is one by default, planned as well. As you can see, the configuration is really the same. But in this case, out of the box, we have two. If the revenue has been cashed or billed, in both cases, we're going to use the revenue to be considered as actual values. Okay. All right, other aspects on the configuration. These are just the parameters, but we can add extra elements to our ITM Platform environment. For example, maybe we would like to, I don't know, identify the region for our projects, or maybe the customer type, or maybe the language or the technology for certain projects. And these values do not exist in ITM platform at all. If I go to the general page where I can identify and classify my project, okay, I only see pre-built fields. Well, in this customization area, I can create extra custom fields. Okay, let me explain with the basic case. First, I need to choose an entity. These are the different entities that I can create a custom field for. Like, for example, projects, or maybe activities, programs, or tasks. Okay, if I select projects, as you can see, I have certain fields already created. Okay. And again, as an example, let me show you how I will create a new one. I can click on Add New Field. Is gonna ask me, for example, if it's enabled for all entity types or no. This is where I could choose if this field is relevant for all my project types. So first, you need to create your parameters and make sure that the types are defined correctly in there, because types will also allow you to determine whether a custom field should be applicable or not, okay? You can enter the field name, for example, region, okay? You can enter an optional description. Then you need to select a field type. This is the explanation. You can select a date value, a drop-down list, and in here you can configure that drop-down list. An HTML field, this is used for descriptions, long descriptions, or multi-line text fields, okay? A simple list. The main difference between a list and a drop-down list is that a drop-down list will allow you to select only one value, but a list will allow you to select more than one, okay? A number, a percentage value, red, yellow, green list, so you can choose a traffic light value, or a simple text, a single line of text, okay? For example, in this case, I can create a drop-down list. I can mark it as required if I want to, okay? Display, this is important. If I would like to include it in the custom field area for a project, I'm going to show you that in a second. And then I just need to create my different options. For example, I can create in here, US, Europe, and Japan, for example, okay? Now you can also choose whether you would like to display this field to team members. In certain occasions, you want your team members to be able to see information about your projects, because the team member can see basic elements in the general page, okay? If you would like to hide that field from team members, okay, leave it unchecked. If you would like to include it for team members, you can enable this option as well, okay? All right, let me save my changes and show you how this is displayed. I have my region in here. Now, what I'm gonna do is simply refresh this page, okay? All right, let's scroll down, and all the way down, I have this area under methods that is gonna display our custom fields, okay? All right, probably you are already asking yourselves if you can change the layout for this general page. That is not possible at this time, okay? The custom field area is the one all the way down, okay? The only thing that you can control is based on your selection of project type, whether certain fields are gonna be visible or no, okay? All right, real quick, the rest of the configuration settings in here, we have a plugin panel. This will allow you to create plugins. What are plugins? Plugins are extra features, extensions to the ITM Platform list of features. For example, maybe you would like to create an interface with Jira. Okay, this is our typical example. Well, for that, we have a pre-configured extension. You just need to enable it and connect it to Jira, okay? Or you can create your own extensions that can do things like, for example, send out a notification every week about which projects have been created, or maybe I can send out an email summary to the team member or the project manager for already due tasks. These kind of things can be done through extensions. Okay. And as you can see, also certain levels of integrations with other systems. If you are interested in this aspect on ITM Platform, we will have a specific training for extensions. Okay. We also have an area for import settings. This is very specific to importing purchases. Let me explain. If I'm working inside a project, sometimes I would like to capture purchases, right? And purchases can be captured manually in here. If I select add a new purchase, I can configure it in this area. However, sometimes we already have a system that manages our purchases. And instead of capturing them manually, it would be better if I can import them. Well, there is one way to do this import, not an automatic import. It depends on the end user, because in here, I need to click on import a CSV file, okay? I just need to choose the file that I would like to import, okay? But as for the configuration itself, in this area, you can define the mappings. You just need to have a sample of your CSV file, okay? You can upload it in this area and then select from that CSV file what column represents which field in ITM Platform, okay? And other aspects that might be imported. For example, the default status, if you would like to allow creation of new purchases, or you are just updating existing ones, etc. Okay. All right, real quick. We need to also cover some basics on managing your users. You need to grant your end users permissions to access ITM Platform once you have done the customization, the configurations. For that, you want to go to the organization area, where first you will need to configure the roles. Okay. So what I'm going to do in here first is expand user management and go to the role definition. Role definition will represent the different permissions that you would like to assign to your end users. By default, out of the box, you will have this: project and service manager, project manager, a team member, a full access user, or stakeholder. Okay. If you want, in your production environment, you can create new roles. So you can be a little bit more specific about what permissions you are going to enable for your end users. Okay. Once that is done, you can start adding users to your system. How can you add users? Well, you have two ways of doing that. First, in this area, you can you're going to be able to see a button that says add a user. I don't see it in this case because this is a demo environment, and in this environment we don't want to create new users. However, in your production environment, you're going to see a button to add a new user. But let me explain what an existing one. Okay, what you're going to see are these 4 tabs real quick. First, no login user. You can identify someone and not grant a permission to log into your system. This is very common. Maybe you don't want to purchase a lot of licenses, but still you would like to calculate assignments for those users, for those no login users. Okay, so they are pure resources. They won't be able to sign into ITM Platform. But still, again, you want to assign them to tasks. In that case, it's important that you remember that it's up to the project manager to control their progress. The end user cannot log in, therefore they cannot provide you with the progress. Okay. Next, you're going to need a login name, which is going to be the email address. Okay. And this can be pretty much any email address. ITM Platform can allow you to control external users as well. So you are not limited to your own custom domain. You can include Gmail addresses or Hotmail addresses, okay, or an external vendor email address. Okay, if that is the case, you need to set up a password and configure the last and display name and the default language, okay? And if you scroll down, you can then assign the role according to what you defined it in the role definition area. All the things that you can control from here is, for example, if they belong to a specific work group that you already configured, okay, and other references like LinkedIn URL or an alternative email address. Education, this is mostly for HR systems, okay? You don't need to configure if you don't want to. This is mainly informative. Now, as for the position, this is really important. You can select in here if this user is going to be an employee or comes from a provider, from external provider. If it's an employee, you just need to select the category from existing professional categories. I'm going to show you that in a second. If it's a provider, then you need to select provider and then first select that provider. And then you can select the category, name the position and the department. The department is populated after those organizational units that you saw before, okay? So for example, let me choose this one. If I click in here, it's going to display that, right? This is an engineer. The position is production manager. It belongs to the department production, okay? It's currently working in here from this date, all right? As you can see, you can create new positions. So if the position of the user changes, you can update it in here, and ITM Platform will preserve the history of changes. Now, as you can see, it is also displaying a cost per hour or an output cost per hour. This is configured somewhere else. I'm going to show you that in a second. But first, I need to show you that you can choose a calendar to calculate better the assignments for this user or resource, and also the working hours. In the calendar area, I can select what is the base calendar. Right now, I only have one, right? The default company calendar, but you can add extra calendars. What is a calendar? A calendar is a list of non-working days. All right, so you can configure your holidays basically. All right, and after that, you're going to have these two entries. You have a relationship to the default calendar, but you also have David's calendar in this case. If I click on that name, it's going to display a section where, if I want to, I can configure specific non-working days for David. This is not for all users, it's only for David. And things like vacations or PTO, okay? Now, as for the working hours, that is selected under the personal tab. In here, we have the standard working hours. As you can see, I cannot change it in here. Again, this is disabled in the demo environment, but I can configure as many working hours as I want to. To configure working hours and calendar, we need to move next to these two pages. Working hours. In here, you have the basic of how many hours you work per day. In ITM Platform is not relevant at which time you start working. Okay, it's what is only relevant is how many hours you work on a typical working day. 8 hours by default. If you have other cases, for example, a part-time user, then you can configure new working hours. You just need to name it and select how many hours you work on each day. Okay. Now, as for the calendars, this is where you can configure more. For example, I can click on Add New Calendar, I can give it a name, and then just configure the holidays. And that's it, okay? After you have configured your calendars, then you can select the users to be related to those calendars. Some limitations, a specific user cannot have a relationship to more than one calendar. It's only one calendar, okay? Now, as for the cost management aspect, these values that you saw a moment ago when I selected the position, these comes from the categories and rates. So real quick in here, first, I can define the professional categories supported in ITM Platform. In other words, what are the categories that I would like to have to manage our projects, right? Not being a specific resource, okay? So for example, I can select engineer, developer, architect, database administrator, business analyst, financial analyst, etc. The different categories that you would like to have. So first, again, you need to configure them by adding them directly in here. And as you can see, it's just the name. Now, next, if you would like to control costs according to the categories, you need to configure the rest. For global standard cost, don't think about categories. These are global costs that will be used only when you are defining general resources, internal or external resources. So this is not category specific. This is the highest level, right? This is an internal resource or an external resource. And what would be the base cost or bill rate that I would like to consider for those cases? If I want to be specific by category, then I want to go in here. And for each category that I define it in the first step, I can enter a specific cost or bill rate. For example, for controller, I can click on the name, right? And select if the cost that I'm going to capture in here is for general use or if it's for an employee, okay? I can select what is the category name, the date, starting what date this cost is going to be considered, and then the specific cost or the bill rate, okay? Because in ITM Platform, you can control not just costs, you can use ITM Platform to also control or show you income, okay? All right, now, if you would like to also have providers in ITM Platform, first you need to start capturing your providers, and you do that in the next area, providers. Here you can capture any vendor, any provider that you have. Okay, once you have those, okay, once you capture one, in the rates tab, you can add the categories that that provider will give you, right, for in terms of project management. Once you do that, you will be able to enter specific costs. So if I go in here, then I can select what are the rates for the engineer coming from manpower, okay? And this can be different from other providers, from other vendors. When I would like to compare them, I can go to categories and rates, and then the last tab, provider feeds, will show me a comparison. For example, as you can see, I have engineers coming from manpower and blue engineering, and the cost is different, but technical support as well. So this area will display all those combinations based on your current providers. All right. All right. So to finish our session for today, I just need to show you the rest of this little area. For example, multi-currency. If you would like to support multiple currencies, you can create them in here. Remember, you already choose a base currency in your system, US dollars in my case, but I can create new currencies. If I click on add currency, I just need to select what is my new currency from this list, okay? And if it's active or no. And for exchange rates, I can go to this tab and then enter the new base currency, okay? Only the latest currency exchange rate, only the latest exchange rate is gonna be used, right? We don't need to we don't want to recalculate the past, right? So you can enter new exchange rates based on a specific start date. I wouldn't recommend to do this daily, right? It's going to be a lot of work. It's possible, but it's a lot of work. So whenever you want to change the exchange rate, you can do it from here. And starting that date, the system will start calculating new uses of that currency in your system. Okay. All right. Next, you have the assets area. This is where you can keep your list of assets. Remember, first in the parameters area, you defined the types, but the actual catalog for assets is defined in this list. So I can create a new asset, I give it a name, I select the type from the dropdown, and I can create a structure, a tree structure from the assets as well. Okay. And I can also display it on a graphical view similar to the organizational tree view that we saw before. Now, in case that you would like to support portfolio management and more specifically strategic scenarios, you will need to capture these business goals, processes, and global categories, goal categories, sorry. If I go in here into business goals, this is where you can capture your strategic plans. The strategic plan is only a name and a date range. And the business goals are basically just names related to the business plan that you created before. Okay, these catalogs are used when creating strategic decision scenarios. If you would like to map also value chain processes, you can create them in here. So you can add your value chains, their activities and processes. And again, these are basically just names that you can define in here. Okay. Later on, when you are defining your projects, you can create a relationship between the project and the process itself. All right. And for business goals, you can define it in this area as well. Okay. All right. So that would cover the configuration of ITM Platform. At this time, I would like to start reading your questions. However, before we jump into that, if possible, we would like you to help us get 5 stars in Capterra. So if you can go to Capterra and give us our thoughts on our product, that will help us a lot creating a better solution for you. While you do this, I'm going to check if we have questions for today's session. All right, I don't see any questions for today. So with that, I would like to thank you for the time that you dedicated for to this training session, and I'll be happy to see you in our next training session for ITM Platform, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.